The Title Block, Episode Number 14, Disappearing Act. Welcome back to The Title Block, the show about Canadian theatre designers, their history, and their craft. This is Sue Edworthy sitting in for Michael Cruz. Michael has laryngitis and he wanted to get this particular episode out quickly, so I'm stepping in to introduce you to this special episode. On January 11, 2015, a special event was held at Theatre Passe Muraille called Disappearing Act, a public forum on Canadian theatre and Toronto audiences. The forum was born out of a simple question posed on Facebook a few weeks earlier. What can we do to counter shrinking theatre audiences in Toronto? Theatre producer Derrick Chua, agent and executive director of the Associated Designers of Canada, Sheila, and me, Sue Edworthy, a theatre marketing and communications professional, convened with over 100 artists and producers in Toronto to discuss ideas to shore up the shrinking audiences in Toronto theatre. We collected questions from the community and asked them to give us their best ideas on how not to only frame the problem, but hopefully create strategies that would help producers and creators build their future audiences in a cultural milieu that competes with film, TV, Netflix, and the internet, and consists of an aging theatre literate audience. This is a huge issue, and one we could not solve in a 2-hour forum. However, it is discussions like this that we need to have, all over the country, to confront the issue of how Canadian theatre can sell itself and remain relevant. Just a reminder to check out an upcoming event pertinent to this discussion. Staff, formerly a not-for-profit theatre marketing and communications company, is undergoing a transformation to a subsidized capacity-building organization for Toronto theatre. Please join them on January 26, 2015 for Open Source Brainstorm. A link is in the show notes. Special thanks to Associated Designers of Canada, the staff at Theatre Passe Muraille, the Next Stage Theatre Festival, and our audience. Here now is Disappearing Act, a public forum on Canadian theatre and Toronto audiences.
All right, hello. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Wow, this is great. Okay, I'm at some point I'm going to do a head count because we've been sort of, we have a bet amongst ourselves among the, 400 people who said yes on Facebook. How many will actually show up to an event?
I have an attendance list.
so this is good. Yes. Well, welcome, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming to this, and it's great to see a lot of both familiar and unfamiliar faces. I hope I get a chance to speak with some of the people that I don't know later on after this, but for now, welcome, and just a quick sort of introduction. So my name is Derrick Chua, and we're all gonna go on and introduce ourselves. Do you wanna?
I'm Sue Edworthy. I run Sue Edworthy Arts Planning. I produce and do marketing and communications for people just like you.
My name is Sheila. I'm the Executive Director of ADC, Associated Designers of Canada, and I have been a producer in the past.
And that's a really short, both of these women have, not to suggest that they're older or anything, but they have many years of experience. They're very young.
I moisturize.
And my name is Derrick Chua. I'm the producer for Studio 180 Theatre and also an independent producer for a bunch of other companies. I sort of have freelanced over the years, and so welcome. So this sort of came about partly because I think I sort of expressed a frustration on Facebook and with people with some of what I was I go to a lot of theater in the city, and thank you. All right. No, I went to 380 shows last year. Let's get that out there. So that's a lot of theater. But sadly, a lot of those shows that I went to, which were wonderful shows, were very poorly attended in Toronto, and so I was getting frustrated with that and trying to figure out what can anything be done? What should we do about it? And you always have these conversations in bars and after the show and that kind of thing. But I figured, well, let's try to get people together. Let's see what happens, and that was sort of the impetus behind this, and these two lovely women helped to organize this. But you know, so the idea of this is it's a forum. You know, we really want to hear from you guys. So you know, after this sort of initial thing that we introductions, most of this will be you guys. You know, we really want to hear your thoughts, your ideas, your opinions about some of the topics that we're going to go over. So.
I will definitely go from there. Once again, as Derrick said, thank you all so much for coming to this. This is unfortunately one of the fuller houses I'm sure we've seen in a little while. But then again, you're all comped in, aren't you? It wouldn't be a theater event without thank yous, so I'll start with those. Absolutely big, huge thank you to Theatre Passe Muraille and to Andy and Regine. Equally huge thank you to the Theatre Passe Muraille staff who is here on a chilly Sunday to help us do things. Definite thank you for the Next Stage Theatre Festival who said, oh sure, use the antechamber. And we went, great, and then said, no, we need to go somewhere else. Big thank you to them. And a thank you to Michael Cruz and Title Block Podcast. A reminder that obviously, since I just mentioned a podcast, this is being recorded today. What we'd like you to do is when you get up to say your comment or idea, please identify yourself. It doesn't have to be a huge identifier. It could be, my name is Megan, into your comment. If you do not wish to be recorded, change it to, my name is Megan, I do not wish to be recorded, so Michael can edit you out. We're also obviously taking photographs today. If you don't want to be photographed, I guess you could do this or something, but do that. Yeah, do that. People who are tweeting, live tweeting, wanting to follow this on Twitter, we came up with the hashtag this morning of the, oh God, we have to come up with a hashtag. So the hashtag is hashtag audience TO, but we're doing it hashtag AUD, capital TO, hashtag odd TO, which kind of suits us. It really does. I think that covers what I had to say in the thank yous. Did I miss anyone I should be thanking? Cool. All right, Sheila?
Yes, so you're not going to talk about methodology, actually.
I'm going to make you talk about methodology.
All right. So
you used the word methodology.
yeah, I know. So our hope for today is that it's not a kvetch fest, and that we look for ideas. At the very least, solutions would be even better, but let's start with ideas. Clearly, this is more than a one-day kind of issue that we'll need to pursue each individually as we go through the next 100 years. What I would like to know before we get started is who is in the room? What kind of people are here? So theater people, clearly. Just with a show of hands, how many of you are producers? Okay. How many of you are PACT, part of the PACT system? Okay. And so the rest are by default indie. How many of you produce multiple shows per year?
Cool.
Okay. And how many produce shows not every year, like once every 2 years, once every... Okay. Okay. That's some good context. Yeah. Oh, are there other types of people in the room that don't fit in that any of those categories? Okay, so what do we have as strays? We have theater writers. Board members, okay. That's really a nice turn of events.
A round of applause for the board members attending.
Terrific, okay, so interlopers. Any other kind of person here? Sorry? Terrific. Funders. Yay.
I also heard that we had dancers.
Yep.
There we go.
Yep. That's
Amazing,
terrific.
thank you. Wow. So I mean, I'm looking through the crowd. So I'm seeing a great mix of people. Some people who operate venues. A lot of people who are independent theater producers and theater makers from all kinds of fields, from dance to theater to some of the arts councils are here. Some of the arts service organizations are here. So thank you all for coming. Basically, again, because most of this is going to be you guys talking, just logistically speaking, so we have 2 handheld mics, and I'm going to be kind of walking around to whoever is going to be speaking. We're going to talk about topics in a second, but just so you know, I'm going to get off my seat in a few minutes and just be around. So when it comes time to speak, if you just sort of want to hold your hand, I'll bring a mic over to you, and then bring the second mic over to the next person. So, okay. And again, it is being podcast, so speak clearly into the mics, even if you have a loud voice. So let's get into.
Basically what we did, I mentioned this on the Facebook post, but it's always nice to know what we're doing live. Sheila, owner of the word methodology, has taken all the questions that were posed and presented, and she's created 4 distinct categories for each. So we have 4 sets of questions to be asked. And what we'd like to do is Sheila or I will ask the questions, because some of them are hard questions and nobody needs to feel like they're going to get fired tomorrow for asking that. So we will ask the questions. You will come up with the answers, ideas, solutions with Derrick and his handy roving microphone. And we'll go through it that way. We'd like to take between 3 and 7 responses, depending on time, depending on how much people want to talk about that particular subject, and we'll sort of ebb and flow it a bit that way. We did come up with one thing, the burning question for today, which I'll mention now, and Sheila will mention again at the end. And it's just something to keep in the back of your mind while you're listening to the questions and hearing other people's answers. What specific actions can we here in this room now, today, take to attract more of the Toronto audiences into our theaters? What can we do? Not what we complain about, what we can do. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Sheila and Derrick.
Right. There's one other viewpoint that I found important as I looked through the questions. And this is totally plagiarism from a woman called Clara Miller, who writes about developing working capital in the arts. And she talks about understanding the difference between successful coping and successful changing. And I think today it's really about thinking about successful changing.
Okay, great. So so we're gonna dive in then to whatever the first topic is. But when they start asking the questions, if you can keep your responses to sort of a minute or less, that would be great. I mean, and I'll be around to. I'm not gonna shut it down, but just a lot of people here, and we want to hear from as many people as we can. And there are a whack of topics to talk about. So just sort of keep that in mind. So what do you want to start with?
Sheila?
I'm starting, and a lot of the questions fell under sort of the heading of economics, right? And so we'll start there. The underlying ideas that were found were often about supply and demand, and also about right sizing. And so one of the first questions is it necessary to create or pull large audiences? Do you have an opinion about that? Yes or no? If yes, why? If no, why not? Is it necessary to pull large audiences? Well, so you had an idea. So start with the mic there.
Well, it's not an idea. It's
Okay.
comment.
Yeah, well, comments
are allowed.
Hi, it's Rosemary Doyle at Sandcastle Theatre. If you want to make any money, it is. I mean, theater is inherently communistic in that the output that we do is never worth the amount of work that we put into it. We can never be paid what we're actually worth. But it's nice to get paid anything even approximating that by pulling in a bigger audience. I mean, because each of those people adds with their money to the supply of energy that we've put into the show. So yes, but can we have smaller venues that need to fit, to get to a high capacity as a smaller amount? We can do that. That's what I'm doing with the Red Sandcastle. But I want my 50 seats full. That's ideal.
Right.
Yeah, so people who don't know, Red Sandcastle Theatre is about a 60-seat venue, 50-seat venue?
It goes from 50 to 70 depending on the size of your stage.
Yeah, so we have Kim over there.
Hi, Kimberly Bone, Keystone Theatre. I think it depends on what you're doing, whether it's a small, non-equity production, or whether if you're doing an equity production and you're looking at a decent sized space and you're having to pay, even if it's, the Indie 2.0, there's still a lot of financial responsibility to, as a producer, to pay those talented actors and directors and designers to do what they're doing. You kind of need to sell tickets to cover that off, because I know for us, we fundraise till we can't fundraise anymore, just to open the door. And if you don't sell the tickets, then it's coming out of somebody's pocket to fulfill that commitment that you have to your cast and to everybody who has come together to create this piece of art. So I think it really depends on what you're doing and what your level of project is, whether or not you can manage doing a show in a van, or you can do a show in your at Berkeley upstairs and try to cover off the cost of doing that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Does anyone feel the opposite way? There's a hand. Okay. Oh.
Okay. Come back down if you want. I think.
I think I can project. Can you hear me? Yeah, but then the podcast won't get it. Oh, that's.
Go ahead.
That's all right. Okay, my name's Caroline. Sorry about that. I just want to talk about the economics. I think companies. I'm wondering if there could be a coalition created for smaller companies to get tax numbers, because businesses, small, medium, and large, do want to give money, but they need that tax shelter. So the thing is that it is illegal to latch on to maybe a larger company that likes you, for you to appropriate or borrow them. But then it's really about consumer, like business and consumer Canada. If they could have a coalition where we could talk to them about getting a through line into getting tax numbers quickly as smaller companies. And then if local places would fund us and they got a tax return, believe me, it benefits them as microeconomies making better money, because then we do better work. We're able to pay people. We get people out. Those restaurants and taxis and businesses that's what I see as an infusion to create that coalition, to speak to Consumer Ontario or Canada, to get that every company here deserves a tax number. Maybe a second tier. And that's just something I've been thinking about for a while.
Okay.
It takes too long for smaller companies to get them, and the paperwork is too ridiculous. Maybe we may not get the same amount as Soul Pepper or Video Cabaret or very established companies that would retrieve more funds. But there's no reason why we can't get those funds as well from the private sector. That's it.
Caroline, I can actually speak to that, because I am just starting to work with a couple of people on a great piece that Jane Marsland has put together discussing the idea of an umbrella company to create that sort of framework for exactly what you're talking about. So there's our positive moment to start with. Something is happening about that.
Has anyone tried an experiment where you have, everyone says you need a large audience so that you have large money, right? But what if you had a small, exclusive audience that each person paid a lot? Right? Like you know, it only seats 20 and they all pay $100, and it's really intimate and exciting. Have you experimented with that?
I haven't experimented with that, but I've attended shows like that, and what I find is that yes, yeah, then you can get more revenue if you have only 10 people in the audience. Each of them are paying $50 to $100, but it really it excludes my colleagues, my friends, the people that my peers that I would like. I know you don't make theater for other theater people. It'd be good to make theater for business people and other people, you know, in society. But I do find that there is a very exclusive factor to that, which I don't personally feel comfortable with. Maybe because I'm not super capitalist, but that's what I think on that.
Andy McKim, Theatre Pass Marai. Yes, we have experimented with that. Hooked is a show that's playing in our season this year in the Backspace. And additionally, Hooked's developmental life was Nikki Gadagny, who's the adapter and the performer, started performing it in homes with an accompanying supper. The show consists of 7 characters, each with their own monologue. And there's an 8-course dinner that comes with the 7 characters when it's done in someone's home. So we seized upon the opportunity to both present her in the Backspace as part of our season, but also to use the opportunity of her performance in homes as a fundraiser. So for the fundraiser, there are 12 to 14 people, and it is at fundraising prices, so it's quite expensive. We've had some success with it so far, and we expect to have more success, but it's built around a fundraising model as opposed to a performance model.
Right. We need to move on to a new question. Is there simply too much theatre on offer in Toronto for the audience we have?
Yeah, that was certainly one of the things that that was a common question. I mean, you know, the last few years, there's been a rise, and I think it's great myself. But you know, there's been quite a few of these sort of storefront theaters. The storefront theater itself being the name of one of them. Red Sandcastle being one, Unit 102, or the Theater Machine being one. The coal mine theater and so on. And so, yeah, I think, and I'm not sure if this is a reality or not, but sometimes it does feel like there is more theater on right now than there has been in the past. So yeah, so we're working. I'm curious to hear about people's thoughts about that. Is that actually true? Do we have too much theater for the audiences that we have? And yeah, so
If you could
ideas,
get a bit of
thoughts.
context, Derrick. TAPA itself had 171 company members a year or so ago. They're up to over 190 now.
So 20% increase in 1 year?
Nice. Megan Mooney, I'm the founder of Mooney on Theatre. So obviously, I might be a biased person here, but I don't think I don't think that you can have too much theater. I think that the more theater you have, the more audience you will build. I think that it's a very different audience who goes to, I think it's a very different audience who goes to a show at Storefront than who goes to a show at Canadian Stage. I think that, or goes to a show at Soul Pepper, or, you know, and I think that the reason we're all sitting here talking about this is because we want to figure out how to reach out to those audiences and figure out how to let them know that there's stuff out there and stuff happening. Because I think the truth is that it's just a whole different kind of experience going to something at going to something at like I'm forgetting what it's called. Is it called the coal mine? Yeah, going to something at Storefront or coal mine, or than it is going to something at Passe Muraille or Canadian Stage, and so I think that, and also things like site specific, all of those things, they're completely different experiences. And I think that, no, I would fight tooth and nail the idea that there's too much theater.
Hi, my name is Klaus. I'm from the Second City. I would say no, there's not too much theater in Toronto. It's kind of like asking if there are too many restaurants in Toronto. The truth is you should have as many as the public will attend, and the most successful, the ones, the fittest will survive. And I don't mean that necessarily to mean quality. The ones that offer a value proposition or an entertainment proposition that people want to subscribe to are the ones who are going to survive. So you could have the best restaurant in the world, make the best dim sum in the world, but if you charge $700 a plate, probably nobody's going to come, or maybe you put it in the restaurant in the wrong location, et cetera. Those who offer a good perceived value, a good entertainment choice, the idea that, people in the world of entertainment choices we have here in Toronto, from sports to movies to, a million things you can do in Toronto, why are they going to choose theater? What's the proposition that's going to bring them in the door? So it's not too many, it's, making sure the decisions you're making as a producer are ones that are going to make your theater an attractive proposition to the person seeking entertainment.
All right.
Do we have a dissenting view? Just curious.
Hi, I'm Sten Derrick with Guild Festival Theatre. And in terms of too much theatre for the population of Toronto, I think the only way you could assert that is if everything is based on supply and demand. So it's only if demand is something that's carved in stone and fixed forever that you can try to establish whether we're doing too much theatre. Demand is something that you create and build on an ongoing basis. And one of the things that I have been interested in exploring is whether or not, some of the things that TAPA is doing right now is creating the idea of an alliance, the team effort and the full impact of all the theaters joining together to reach the people that live in Toronto. And today, when you look at things like, trending on the internet, I think that something could be done to really, for instance, with the new billboard tax, all the revenue that the city is getting from the billboard tax, if there are ways some of that money could be channeled into a really high-profile campaign on the TTC to reach new audiences. We have our loyal subscribers to all the major theaters, and they keep renewing their subscriptions.
They're not. They're shrinking.
They're not. They're shrinking.
They're shrinking.
Okay.
If you look at the TAPA audiences reports for the last 3 years, if you put them side by side, you can see audiences going down. Mm-hmm. It's a fact.
Okay.
And the amount of companies is going up. Yes, it's difficult math.
So if that's happening, then it tells us that we need new audiences.
Yes.
We need to find a new demographic, and that can be done by advertising on the subway, TTC, and giving deep discounts for people to try it out the first time.
I will agree with you to an extent, but I would say that is a facile argument. An ad campaign is not going to do it, quite literally.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm not a full dissenter because I love theater and I love seeing good theater, but I do think that we as an independent community have to question why we're doing the shows that we're doing them and sort of examine the merit to the community and whether or not it's promoting sort of an independent, new Canadian theater movement. Like, are we just recycling shows that other people are doing, or are we really finding a new way to do them? Is what we're doing with these existing pieces exciting and fresh and drawing a new audience, or are we just doing them because we really wanted to do that show? And I'm, guilty of it myself, but you have to kind of, I think, as we move forward, we have to think as a community, what is the merit to what we are doing? Why are we doing it? And how do we reach into the other facets of our lives to create new audience members? How do we invite the the people we meet in our Joe jobs that maybe never go to theater, instead of just inviting all of our, friends and theater creators? And how do we talk to our parents and say, hey, you should get your friends to come to the show who never go to the theater? So I think that there's not necessarily too much theater, but we just have to kind of examine why we're doing it and how do we use the other venues in our life to kind of pull people in.
Oh, it's me. My name is Kat, and I guess I'm just piggybacking on top of that question, but I think that we have too much theater that is geared at a certain kind of person. I think that we all talk constantly about finding these new audiences, this new demographic, but we're not branding theater in a way that's attractive to young people. Because literally, audiences are dying. We're all thinking it, it's true. And gearing a season or a brochure or a poster or a social media marketing strategy at a group of people that, like, my father can't use Google, he calls it Google, like Google, like, no, like, not gonna happen, not gonna look online. But all my friends will. So we've pretty much stopped at Bruja, we've stopped doing print and are almost exclusively marketing on Facebook and purchasing Facebook ads and figuring out our Twitter shit so that it gets to the people that we want to come to our shows. And it's working, but very slowly because they're super resistant to change, young people. But I think that if we want these new audiences, we have to put more work into making what we do attractive to them.
We're going to talk more about that when we talk about larger branding issues. I think we need to move on. One of the other questions about this are emerging funding models healthy? How do we live in a world where pulling together Kickstarter or Indiegogo is a more important skill than producing interesting work?
What was the question again?
How do we now live in a world where pulling together and engaging Kickstarter or Indiegogo is a more important skill than producing interesting and worthwhile art? So I think really what this question is about is how do we address the issue of balance between good art and clever fundraising / marketing. It could be clever marketing too.
I think that's correlated a lot with the fact that there are a lot of theater companies coming up. I think, and piggybacking off of what you were saying about younger audiences, that I don't feel like there are new audiences. The audience has always been there. It's just they're younger, so we have to find a more engaging way to do it. Personally, I feel that the theater community here in Toronto, the work that's being done on major stages isn't actually quite reflective of what people want or can relate to. So that's why there are a lot of theater companies coming up and putting out different types of shows in storefronts and different venues and things like that, thinking outside of the box. And I think that also goes with the Kickstarter and things like that. For me, I feel like there's a cry, like people are hungry, artists are hungry to just put out their work, and if Kickstarter and things like that, and doing something where it's like, hey, we have this great idea, we're not really good at articulating it through the other norms of like granting and things like that, but this is our idea, we're on video, we're doing it, we're making it fun, give us some money so that we can just put out the art. I think that's why it's Kickstarter and that type of stuff is taking away as, for me, it's all producing. So like, it's not your traditional way of doing it, but it's the, I guess not the easiest, but the most affordable way to produce a show.
So you got a very interesting point.
Only work once. If this work isn't already interesting and original, right? So that's, it works once, it'll only work once, and the show isn't interesting.
Hi, I'm Philip Turkowitz. I think the emerging artist funding model that you were talking about at the beginning of the question is something that's interesting. As an emerging artist, I find that there is a lot of funding, there's not a lot of funding. It's really difficult to find it, and that any way that you can find it and grab it is what you're going to do. So it does become more important for you to be able to find money to put into your shows than it is to really create the show, because that allows you access to spaces and things like that. And I think that the model right now encourages emerging artists to create a show any way that they can, put it on, and then move on to something else. And I don't think that there's any sort of development or effort being put into developing a show past a certain point, seeing it again and again, and spending time on it, because the money really only goes to a sort of, I don't know. I think it only really goes to one show at a time, especially for emerging artists. And then once you become more well-known, people are willing to invest money in something that's going to last a longer term. So if you want to develop an audience as an emerging artist, it's difficult because they can't follow a show as you work on it for 2-3 years, as we are still learning how to create shows. And that 2 and 3 year process actually is kind of useful in figuring out how to make something of worthwhile, so that you don't have to focus on your only skill set being making money or finding the money on Kickstarter or whatever.
Right. By show of hands, because that's the quickest way, how many people feel that exploring new funding models takes up a disproportionate amount of their time? And by that, I mean more than 35%.
Can I sort of add to that question? How many people here will do the show whether they have the money or not?
How many people here? How many people here think that affects the quality of the show that is presented? That's right. So you do the show whether you have money or not. So you've done it without the money. Do you think that affects the quality of the show? Okay.
I just wanted to establish, to make sure that nobody in this room is sitting around with heaps of money and endless amounts of free time in which to do these things. I just wanted to check.
You're up next, because we're naturally segueing into this whole notion of marketing.
Yeah, David Tampa. We live in a world where they don't come up with new chocolate bars or cereals. They just do riffs on old chocolate bars and riffs on old cereals. And although that's sort of amusing, I think it has a huge statement about, and what you're talking about in the original question, about where society is changing and how to get people's attention. And that people don't go to brands so much anymore. They go to niches. So like, if you make something about Star Wars, the concept of Star Wars, the world of Star Wars, you're gonna have 1 million people that go to that automatically. And it's also sort of talking about what you're talking about, where you build, each show you build is separate, and the way that you tackle it is separate, because you're trying to hit a niche of something, be it the theater, to bring it back to theater, be it a group of young theater-minded professionals in town, or whatever it is. But I think that, and this kind of ties also into the old school way of having memberships, or what's it called?
Subscriptions.
Subscribers, yeah. And that, yeah. Well, that's, but that's, that's the fact that I forgot that is, I think, very telling, because it's not how I've ever worked. I've never been part of a subscriber package, and that we're hitting things project by project, I think is insanely telling. These are more ideas and trying to tie them in as opposed to solutions.
So one last, before we move on, can you just give it to the back there? One last comment.
Hi, my name is Julie. I was wondering about, when you were talking about the funding aspect through Indiegogo and things, can't you separate those two and have two different bodies working on it so that you're not depleting the energy that's going into the production? And I think it's a different brain that goes into marketing than goes into creativity, so that one isn't working against the other.
Personally, I would tend to agree. There's a real issue around simultaneity with this business, and that everything has to happen at the same time. So you do need many hands on deck. The problem is you also have to pay those people, or you should want to pay those people, in my opinion. And so this is where drooping audiences create stress, because we do the show anyways, which means we either try and do it all ourselves, or we hire the cheapest assistant we can, which may have to do with impact on skill set or experience or other things of like that.
Okay, great, thanks. So we're going to move on to the sort of the second general topic that Sue is going to take us through.
Sorry? We're going to move on to marketing, branding, outreach. Here's a quick question. Is traditional, in quotes, work faring better than contemporary, in quotes, work, or vice versa?
Say that again?
Sure. Is traditional work being put up faring better than contemporary work? And I think, unless the person's here, I'm going to speak for them and say, I think that's that sort of feeling of we're doing a Shakespeare in a musical versus we are doing something in a disused gas station with 20 seats.
So traditional versus contemporary, so probably like Shakespeare and stuff that Soul Pepper does versus the brand new Canadian theater kind of things?
Yeah,
Is that
exactly.
the question, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay, any thoughts about that and whether that's, how that affects sort of the audiences and so on?
Hi, my name's Donna, and last week I was fortunate enough to have dinner with two very avid theater goers. These ladies are amazing. I hardly know them, but they had pulled me into their lives. They wanted to give me funding, which is great. But anyway, they were talking about this play they saw where they went into the theater and they had to line up and they got a samosa and someone, I forget the name.
Brimflavasha?
That's it. And they've seen countless, they went on and on and on about how much theater they've seen. But they kept hitting on this one non-traditional model of theater. And I think, I come from a marketing background, I think there's something in marketing called WIFM. What's in it for me? Sue knows all about that. And people love that. People want to feel part. I think these ladies were talking so much about getting that samosa. How much is a samosa, right? But they're still talking about that. So I think, in my opinion, if that's called contemporary model, I think that's working, where people love to feel part of the experience.
There's a fantastic article in The Guardian last week. It's floating around Facebook on theater that begins right at the front door. Oh God, it's a good article. Read it, yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Mackenzie Hillier. So I've produced both traditional, like Shakespeare, and modern. I was the general manager and producer for Shakespeare in the Ref for 2 years, the renewed one. And we were blown away by the response. Like, we budgeted for 600 people to attend, and in our first season we had 2,400. And it really shocked us, but we were obviously fulfilling a need in a very, like in the East End, in Withrow Park. There'd been a company there before, and people from that area remembered and wanted that experience. They wanted to go to a park, bring their family, sit down under the stars and like watch some performance. I've been producing less traditional theater lately, and it has been a lot harder to draw in audiences, depending on how this, where the show is. Like, if you're really far out in the East End and not on the subway line, frankly, it is way more difficult to get people to go, especially if it's cold outside. I produced for a clown company in early 2014 that has a really large following, and I was expecting it to be I'd anticipated a really large audience, and we didn't have it because they weren't in a festival setting, because that's where their audiences typically find them, and so that's where they expected to go. So I don't really have an idea or a thought to offer, except that I have found in my own experience that people do tend to be drawn towards traditional theater. Audiences that you wouldn't normally necessarily see at other indie shows will go to something that's indie if it's something they recognize. It also depends on how you market it. Like, we worked really hard to make sure that our branding was sexy, on point, that we looked like a really hot young company, and suddenly it became true because that's what we put out there, thankfully. Whereas with the non-traditional stuff, like, we do our best to do the same thing, but it's still difficult to draw an audience, especially if they're not really sure what they're seeing. Just some my thoughts.
It's about the last question and this question, and I think somehow we have failed to, as a community, be able to define what good or interesting art is. We shy away from criticism or critical thinking about the pieces that we do. It's hard to define where theater is going, what it is that we're really doing. Both traditional and modern models have done well all over the world, but there's like an art criticism and a critical thinking on the art that gives these things a life and a following. There's a scene. Here we have like a divide, not just between our audience and the practitioners, but between academic people who are studying theater and people who practice theater. I haven't read an interesting paper about Canadian theater in so long, and I've been looking. So maybe we should not shy away and try to define again what good art is, what is it that we do, and then we can go to people and say this is what we do. It's kind of hard to define for people what it is that we do, other than the content of the show.
Hi, I'm Holger Saim. I'm an academic and I blog about theater.
It's so nice to see your face.
Hello.
I've never seen your face.
As I come out from my digital shroud. I find the distinction between traditional and contemporary really confusing and a total red herring. Shakespeare is not traditional, nor is a play written yesterday contemporary. A show isn't the same as a play. What I find troubling about the way that question is phrased and what it reveals to my mind is that we tend to not draw a proper distinction between plays and productions. So just because something was written 400 years ago doesn't mean you can't stage it in a way that has nothing to do with how it was written and is totally hot and cool and uses metaphorics and the stage language that is of today. Just because something was written yesterday doesn't mean it can't be boring and old and use exactly the same stage language that Ibsen would have been familiar with. What I think where that distinction really breaks down is where it seems to me that Say What Storefront is doing actually breaks down that distinction, because they do plays people know. They do plays people have heard of, like Miss Julie, yes, okay, in a sort of mildly adapted version, but really Miss Julie, and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and they're doing tremendously well. And I think we need more of that mix, people who use work that people know, and that people might want to see, things that students might learn about in a drama course, but that they've never seen on stage. And then they go and see it because of that, and they discover that actually seeing a play that they've read on stage is a totally different experience and has nothing to do, might have little to do with the reading experience. But you get a kind of, you get a sort of synergetic effect where people come and see something because they think they know what they're going to get, and then they're going to get something entirely different, and it's exciting.
Everyone upstairs. Michael has put a microphone up there if you guys want to use that, just so you know.
Yeah.
We hear that's the sound I was waiting to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Melanie Rymack. I'm going to turn around because I think it's weird to talk forward. I think I'm sort of combining a whole bunch of answers. I'm sorry, I'm going to hijack this. And Holger, something you just said really struck me of making theater people might want to see. I think is a really useful idea. When we're talking about making shows, even though we don't have the budget, why are we doing that? That's a really bad business idea. Sorry, it is. I know our art is precious, but it's not that precious. If we're going into personal debt to put up a play, why? It better be really good. And if you don't have the money, it's probably not. I don't know. Is this like overly harsh?
No, that's a throwback fish in the middle of the room.
I think we
well
need to
done.
like really look at what we're doing. Are you making the show because you want to be in this particular play? Like, you know, like because you want to play Hamlet, or is that why you're putting it up? Cool, but like get the money. But more power to you. Absolutely. I wrote a one-woman show. I wanted to make a show. I made it. I sold it. Bam. Theater made. Audience is happy. I'm happy. I think we really need to look at why we're making this art and what's sustainable creatively. If we're making half-assed shows, don't make the show. Financially or creatively, don't do it. I think there's better ways to spend our energy.
Yeah, if you want to go over here and grab that mic over there, and I certainly hope nobody sets out to make a half-ass show, but they sometimes that's what it turns out. But but sure, go for it.
Hi, I hear what you're saying.
Can we get your name, please?
My name is Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
I think that there are a lot of shows that get ignored for a lot of really strange reasons. There's an issue, I think, with people looking at certain topics in certain communities as niche. Like, for example, at the Queer Pride Festival at Buddy's this year, a theater company I'm part of made a show about queerness directed at children and addressing queerness for children and addressing what it is to understand that you don't fit in at a time when your sexuality isn't allowed to be a prominent part of you but still is, and talking about that. And it's a really fucking dope show. And we hardly got
Shameless
any audience.
promo.
But we hardly got any audiences because something like that is looked at as super, super niche. It's looked at as we're directing that at queer families, or you have to have like a queer child to be interested in that, or anything. So I think there's a problem with people being very involved with promoting their own work and not really taking a look at what's out there and going, hey, that's something really unique and really special, and let's put our energy and interest into that. Like you said, you wanted to make a show, so you put up a show, and that was it. I think that we're not paying enough attention to each other, and we're so involved with our own self-promotion that we're not looking at how do I not make myself a strong theater creator? How do I make a strong theater community by being involved in projects that maybe aren't going to further me and maybe aren't going to contribute to my bank account, but are going to enrich this community and truly say something unique.
One rebuttal.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. I have to respond. I think that's missing my point, which was that I did the show because I could afford to do the show. I sat down and I made a budget and I looked at my costs and I looked at what I could expect to make, and it came out. I totally agree with you. We should be looking at the larger context, but I would ask how that show was marketed. Was it specifically marketed towards a queer niche? If that's the case, then how, people can't come to theater if they don't know it exists. So I would question the marketing on the show. I would question maybe the scale of the show. It's just about sustainability and viability. It's not like I'm special and talented, so I'm gonna make a show and I'm awesome. That's not at all what I'm saying. It's just, I wanted to make a piece of work. It happened to be a one-person show. I've made other pieces of theater that certainly were not. And I had to really look at myself and say, can I afford to do this? I was taking on the cost of producing that show personally. I didn't crowdfund for it. I was like, I'm paying for this out of pocket. Can I do that? Is it worthwhile? Will I make a good show? Can I make that money back? The answers were yes, so I went ahead and made it. I've been on projects where I've looked at the budget, I've looked at what we wanted to do, and it just wasn't a responsible decision. And I feel like making art without actually being able to afford to make art for the sake of making art is just a circular argument, and we can't move forward from that.
Derrick?
Sorry, yeah?
We have two more?
Two more? Yep,
Yeah.
Okay, up there and then back.
On the note of contemporary versus traditional and dwindling audiences, I think the biggest problem that could probably be in that is people who are not active theater goers, so you're trying to get people who are not usually going to theater to get to go to theater, they don't want to be your experiment piece. They don't want to go see a show that they don't know if they're going to enjoy. So they're probably more likely to go to traditional, even if it's a new take on it and all that kind of stuff, but something that they recognize and think that they would enjoy versus something that you're just like, oh, this is my experimental piece of my own, and they're like, I don't know what that is. There's a lot of theater to go to, so they'll tend towards things that they recognize versus, and that's probably why it seems like it's shrinking, is because they're not willing to experiment themselves, and you're trying to get these audiences to come and see your stuff, but that's just not how human nature is.
Hi, my name is Heather Blom, and I've worked in marketing and development for both nonprofit arts, previously for a very large dance company here in Toronto, and right now I work for the bad guys at an ad firm, so I've seen quite a few different development models, and I have it's a somewhat problematic solution that I would kind of like to float out to everybody, but one model that I witnessed that worked quite well, it's on a large scale scenario, but the development model of having sort of like creating a community for the audience specifically and giving a degree of curational power to the people who are giving you money. So a degree, like a certain percentage of each season would always be selected or paid for by the donor body. So that way you have that interest, I've seen it happen with both contemporary work or older work, that when the work to a degree is picked by the people who are in essence paying for it, not only are you sort of troubleshooting the friends and family syndrome that is common of theater, where it's, you're there because you love who's on stage or you love who's beside you, who is sharing the audience with you. You're actually creating a larger group of people who are both invested in the piece and are also part of a greater community or donor group that creates its own sort of theater or performance community. And so it almost doubles. It creates a similar scenario to the friends and family kind of draw to be in the audience, but it's from a completely different pool of people instead of from the theater or dance or music community. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there as a potential option. I know the fear, of course, is that you are giving a lot of power to the people who have money, and whether or not they, share the same values or desire to see, progressive work or whatever work aligns with your company, that is absolutely a risk for sure. But it is another solution to soliciting the money you need to create what you love for part of the season and then fund your pet projects later on. Love to hear some thoughts, but
I think it's
guys, we need to move on.
I think it's an intriguing model. I have a mic, so I'm just going to soldier on. I like this notion. Let's face it, already audiences pick the work, right? They come or they don't come. Audiences already pick the work. Letting them pick it before we put it on, if you had 2 projects, that might be a very interesting way to find out which one to do first so that you build audience for the second. I think there's some virtues in there that would be worth exploring.
So this is actually going to build rather nicely on what we were just talking about, and that was some great conversation, guys. I'll answer the first part of the question. Has the definition of theater changed? Yes. If so, are we as theater creators and producers using the same old narrative in addressing the audience? Are we using an outdated model of narrative and explanation to try and get people in to see something that doesn't fall into that definition anymore?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Sasha. I'm a theater academic, I guess I am now. Is that what I am? Who knows? Anyway, I think when we're talking about, again, I'm going to go back to this traditional and non-traditional, when we're using those kinds of words, if we're using them in this room with each other, are those the same kinds of categories we're using to market our work to other audiences? And I think what we're talking about actually is familiar versus unfamiliar, right? They, whoever they is, this imaginary construct of the people who don't yet come to see theater.
They're in the cloud. They're out there.
Right, they exist in this cloud. And I wonder if education has a part to play in all of this. So if we are doing unfamiliar work, can we find ways, and I'm very interested in doing lots of unfamiliar work, which often fails, but can we find ways to talk about what we're doing and how we're doing it and share that with these audiences to educate audiences as we're making theater in terms of the kinds of experiments we want to make?
When I hear about audience and arts education, I think about teenagers being bussed in to see shows. And when I talk about audience and arts education, I am always reminded, Emma and I were having coffee one day a few months ago, and we were talking about how to educate audiences. And I said, they don't know. They don't know that. And my example was, they don't know that theater is not expensive. And to prove my point, I turned to the 2 strangers next to me and said, excuse me, because I'm like that. And they said, yes. I said, quick question, no wrong answer. You know a poster, like for a play, And they're like, oh, you like the one? I mean, yeah, the ones out there. And they said, yeah. I said, what does PWYC mean? Not a hot clue. What?
I just asked my non-theater friend here if you knew what it meant.
Man in the room.
Yeah. It even goes deeper than that, too. So I did a show that I thought was quite well known. It was on Broadway. It was called The Mikado.
Never heard of it.
And the phone wasn't ringing. And that was scary because you burn through cash pretty quick. And so we talked to the box office and said, when people call, what do they say? And they say, oh, they asked for tickets to Mikado, and they stutter a lot and they are clearly uncomfortable. And so we ran an ad campaign, which was kind of crappy, like Mikado, like bravado. It was a radio ad. And then the phone started ringing because people didn't want to show their ignorance by picking up the phone and actually calling the box office. So I think when we look at people who are non-habitual theater goers, we have to think with a lot of empathy, put ourselves in their shoes.
Hi there, my name is Scott Mealy. I do research in the area of audiences, actually. Quick story that actually, and sort of the points actually are applied in Australia right now in some very interesting ways in very large organizations. When I was in theater school, I had two roommates. One was a journalist and one was an engineer. I brought them to my shows that they considered, the weird shows, is what they called them. They came from me. That's why they came to multiple shows, but they came to the social events that went with them. We discussed the weird things that happened in the shows, and they would ask me questions because they wouldn't be embarrassed, because they knew me. And when I left and graduated, they became paying members of that school and actually invested in that, the engineer and the journalist. So, lessons. One is that there's a social component to theater that we sometimes miss. One of the things in this Australia model is that there was a group that was brought in and they were given the opportunity to discuss shows afterwards. When they were surveyed afterwards, many of them stayed and kept going to theater. What did they miss most? Discussing the show afterwards with a group of people, because that was part of the draw for them. The other was the opportunity to do things in a way that didn't embarrass them, which is what you just said, because a lot of new theater audiences get embarrassed because they don't understand things. But if you give them a chance to talk about it, then they feel better about their experience, and they'll often come back because they feel good about this new experience that they just had. So I think this idea of relational, non-patronizing education is one of the key areas in what is, if we want new audiences especially. And by the way, with Sasha's work, one of the things that I really enjoy, the artistic work she does, she didn't mention that, and one of the things that I love the experience of it and talk it up all the time and go to people who don't do theater and they love the sound of it. So I think, how could I get these non-theater people out to something that they clearly would like if they'd had a chance to get out to it?
I did an experiment. This is Donna. I did an experiment in 2014. I did a show, and I asked everybody to pay what they thought was right when they left the theater. So they got in for free, and I stood at the door. I have I did a one-woman show, and I made a lot of money. That it just. It works, and it doesn't just work once, it works a lot of time. So on your poster, postcards, business cards, you put pay what you think is right, and you say to people in brackets, bring cash. I'm serious. And then you stand at the door and you look them in the eye because you've given your head, your heart, your hips to the show, and they have to, if they want to leave without paying, that doesn't happen. So they're paying what they feel is right. It's sort of like having your hat in your hands.
I've done an experiment where we paid the audience to come. It was very atonal contemporary music. It didn't work. They didn't come, even though they could get money.
My name's Karen Elizabeth. I'm actually a new theater producer. I've worked for various theater companies, but this is my first year ever actually submitting grant applications and trying to write crowdfunding campaigns and all of those things for myself and my artist collective. And I'm finding in my own discovering how to write this that people are way too quick to put themselves into a niche. And we are way too quick to use words like queer theater, like feminist theater, that immediately put ourselves into that little, we are only appealing to this particular niche. We are only appealing to the gay crowd. We are only appealing to the feminist crowd. We are only appealing to other artists. And I'm trying really, really hard to not do that to myself with my artist collective and with my friends, because I don't want to screw up our show by accidentally making us seem like we're not mainstream. And I think that we need to be a little bit helpful to each other in that way. I think we need to have ways of sharing each other's theater and of just even making a habit of retweeting and sharing on Facebook and not using those niche words and not saying, oh, my friend's queer theater company, my friend's theater company, my friend's awesome theater company, my friend's amazing theater company that is producing this work that you want to see. It doesn't matter who you are. And I think that just changing the language around that is going to really help all of us.
Hi, my name's Esther. I just talking about what you said about education. I was part of a indie hit called Kim's Convenience.
Never heard of it.
I just want to give an example of the education that they did to get the audiences back into the theater at Soul Pepper. And I do understand Soul Pepper has money to do this, but they did hire a native Korean speaker to come and go up. We went up to North York. We went into the stores. They walked into the stores and talked about the show, handed out posters, and it was done in Korean. The program had a Korean insert. And the other thing that Ince does, I mean, Ince is, he's quite involved in his church, and it was, I know, a lot of word of mouth through his own church, his own family. So it's just an example of what education can do, because those people who went to, a lot of people who went to Kim's Convenience have never seen theater.
Should we move into diversity talk?
Yeah, I think.
Hi, it's Emma again. Oh, sorry.
Go.
So I find the question that you asked really interesting, because we deviated from a conversation about art really quickly into a conversation about marketing and branding. And I'm going to continue on that path myself, because I think, my comment is more about a very specific demographic, and it's about my own inclinations to go to the theater, because I really don't go anymore. Sorry, everybody. I'm the asshole who says, I'll come, and then I don't, because I'd rather stay at home and watch The Killing on Netflix. P.S. It's really good. But the stuff I do go and see is the stuff that feels like a party. Like, when I go to the theater, I want there to be a bar where I can get a really good drink that's not too expensive. Like, I love going to the storefront, and I love laughing, and I kind of feel like, and I'm sorry, call me an asshole if you want to, because maybe I am for saying this, but I feel like a lot of the theater I saw in the early parts of my career, I've been in Toronto for 6 years now, and I went to a lot of indie theater when I got here, was pretty fucking self-indulgent. And I'm kind of at the point in my life where if I'm going to go out and spend money, I don't want to go and see a play for an hour and leave the theater at 9 o'clock and go, so, like, do I go home now? Do I go to a bar? Like, why aren't we capitalizing on this? And some places are. Like, I do love going to the storefront for that reason, because I think there's a great vibe there. There's a bar, there's people to talk to, everyone has a great time, and then, like, by the time I do leave, we go to another bar together. And, like, I'm a theater person, so I know the theater people, so that's my experience, which is different than a non-theater worker going to the theater, but I still feel like that sense is there. So in terms of traditional classical forms of theater versus today, I was thinking about this on my way over here. Like, if you went to the Globe back in the 1600s, there were whores in the back, people selling oranges, you could throw shit at the stage. Like, I think we've deviated from the classical form to a really, like, not stale, but very safe.
We're in the Church of Theater.
Yeah, right?
You will sit there, you will be quiet.
Yeah, don't laugh only when allowed, clap when we say. Like, I actually want to go to the theater that excites me and makes me want to, like, stand up and jump. Some of the best theater I've seen, saw this amazing dance piece in New York, and at the end there was this huge fucking rave. Like, that's what I want to go to. So I want to throw it, like, as an opinion, and as someone who, like, produces theater, I now endeavor to do that as much as possible where I can, provided it fits in with the companies with whom I'm working. That, to me, is exciting.
Guys, we need to get moving. Do we have one more comment? And yeah.
Hi, my name is Marvin. I'm just trying to pull the threads together from where this question kicked off, Sue. And the word education has bounced around a lot. And I'm a teacher, and I have no answers. But in terms of your question, like, I'm probably 3 times as old as anybody in this room, and so in the 70s, when free theater, Passe Muraille, Tarragon, they were just coming up. They were just starting. I mean, pay what you can. My gosh, you had to get there at like an hour in order to get a seat and stuff. Well, my girlfriend's 16-year-old son is on his PlayStation. You cannot tear him away from that. As I say, I have no answers to the question, but that's what theaters are competing with, right? And staying at home and watching Netflix, which 5 years ago didn't even exist. So that, it seems to me, is what theater has to answer, and what the question theater has to respond to is, how do we get the younger people to just buy in once or twice, just to come and sample, never mind, just to come and experience theater. So again, I have no answers to that question, but theater in 2015 is competing with Netflix, PlayStation, things like that, and it's a question that needs to be addressed. Now, maybe there's a lesson to be learned. Again, I don't have all my facts straight, but the CFL, I mean, I'm again, Hamilton born and bred, Hamilton Tiger Cat football and all that sort of stuff, right? And they lost a generation of fans, and now they're getting them back, okay? And it seems to me that's what theater has to think about, is how do we appeal? And maybe it's what this young lady was talking about here, new forms of expression, new ways of marketing. But, Stratford, I for the first time in my life, I became a member of the Stratford Festival. Hey, it's a pretty pish posh swish swash. I get to go into that lounge and stuff. I went the whole hog. But I mean, I was telling Derrick before we started, I just mentioned I'm twice as old as anybody in this room. Going to Stratford makes me feel young, because I am half as young as most people are there. And I think, a good friend, I run an organization called Shakespeareans, which goes into schools and demystifies Shakespeare for kids and stuff. But I was talking to one of the members of our advisory board, who's on one of the major corporations here. He said in 20, 30 years, Stratford is going to be gone. They got to get that younger audience. And it's not a matter, we heard it earlier on in this today, of, I think it was you, Sue, popping them into a bus, taking them down there, and they have to sit and talk amongst themselves and play on their iPhones and all that sort of stuff. It's engaging them into the theater. So as I say, that's my 2 cents worth. It's, how do we get the theater going again and those audiences on an uptick? I think a real serious consideration has to be given to how to appeal to the young.
To be a ray of sunshine, which is really not my specialty, there is evidence in the UK that the fastest growing demographic for theatre is 18 to 35. So that's some place where we should look.
It's always the UK, isn't it? It's always the UK.
Okay, so I think we're going to move on to sort of our last big topic kind of thing.
No.
We have 2, but do we want to skip one, Sue? Do you think we've covered this one?
I think we have.
All right.
We're not telling you what it is. We're just telling you we've covered it.
Well, actually, some of these we've sort of addressed as well. Give us 10 seconds to regroup.
As you were.
Sing the Jeopardy song.
Where's that other mic, by the way? Did I lose that up there? Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, so whoever's up there, if somebody wants to say something up there, find the mic up there, and you can say. No, go ahead, Steve. You got the mic.
All right, I can use it if you want me to.
Yes,
Hi, my name is Steve Fisher. I am a theater critic for Torontoist and Post City and anyone else who will pay me to do it.
I also write about comedy and music, so I'm not exclusively theater. I have two funding models, really quick examples that I don't think people in the theater community think all that much about. And one is Jesse Brown's Canada Land podcast. There is very little media criticism in this country. Not many people writing about other people who write about things. And this guy, Jesse Brown, saw a niche for that and started a podcast. And the way that he decided to fund this was with something called the Patreon campaign, which is where people contribute voluntarily, sort of pay what you can or pay what you think something's worth on a monthly basis. So that's his subscriber system. And even before he broke the John Gomeshi story, this was a very wildly successful campaign for him, to the point that he has made this his full-time job. He's been able to hire other people, 3 or 4 other journalists, to work full-time on this project. And that's because people saw there's a niche. He saw the niche. People saw the need for that. And there's a feeling of community. Even though his subscriber base, they don't go to where he is, and they're all across the country and even outside of Canada, they feel a sense of community and they feel a sense of importance in the work that he's doing. And I see that in the shows that I see at Storefront Theatre, and I see that at the Theatre Centre, which is doing a really good job of becoming neighborhood playhouses, where they're creating art where people are like, they're going to see that even on short notice on day of. The second example I have is I spent 8 days in New Orleans last year, and I was seeing live music 2 or 3 times a day. And nowhere was I buying a ticket and going to that show. You just walk right in. And the musicians are playing, and they take breaks in between their sets, and they pass a jug around or they pass a hat around. And that only works if the people watching the show feel like they're seeing something that's really great and really good. And then they don't throw $1 in and then leave. They stick around and they throw a $20 bill in. So these musicians were making a really good wage doing pay-what-you-can shows every night. And I think that what that means is it doesn't really matter whether you're doing contemporary theater or classical theater. It only matters that your audience thinks and feels that what they're seeing is good and deserves to be paid for and paid well.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I'm so curious for somebody to do that. Hopefully soon in Toronto. It's sort of it happens a lot in Edinburgh. They have a whole free fringe thing and it's same idea. It's people just go in and it's free, but it's not really free because the performer, and usually it is the performer themselves. So you have to look them in the eye at the end, holding the bucket to collect money. And it's fascinating how some people do very, very well under those circumstances. But I haven't really seen a good example in Toronto. I remember yours, but that was quite a few years ago, right? Was it just? Yeah, but it was, okay, 24, okay, so you did that, okay, anyway.
I've always had a fantasy about stopping a show halfway through and asking the audience to all pull out another 20.
We actually sort of very quickly did something like that at a fundraiser I was running for a dance client of mine who began to show a sneak peek of the work that she was doing, and she danced about 6 or 7 steps and then stopped and said, I can't do any more. And you had to bid. I'll pay you $50 for 2 more steps. I'll pay $100 for the rest of the stanza.
Okay, so I think we'll take one more comment, then go on to the next question topic.
Well, at the Red Sandcastle, I get like 42 shows a year that come in, so it's kind of interesting watching what shows succeed and what don't. And price point is a very subtle but interesting thing, and it's not exactly what you'd think. People who price their shows cheap, they go, oh, it's only $10. Those are the ones we get no audience for, because people are like, I'm just going to waste my $10. The shows that go $20 get a reasonable audience, and then the shows that price themselves at $25 or $30 usually sell out. And it really, the quality of the show has very little correlation to do with how much they're charging, but it seems to be what the audiences feel that they're getting. And the higher the amount that you charge for the show, the more people you get that aren't theater people. So the way that I usually like to do this is have a regular price and an artist price. And regular people who are like engineers and accountants and lawyers they like paying money to the arts. They like a ticket price that they can hand over their money. I say, so are you an artist or an adult? And they go, oh, I'm an adult. And they're happy and they give you the money. They're like, yeah, it's just a joke, because I think we all have inner children if we're artists. But they're like, no, I have this boring job and I'm glad to make my life less boring by me giving you money for it. So it's very interesting, because a lot of the shows where they've, like one company came in and put the TO Tix thing on, where it's the $5 for if you're under, but they take half of it. So then I had to explain to this young producer, I said to him, you realize that every seat that you're filling with these cheap tickets to get a younger audience, you're only getting $1 out of that person, $1.25 by the time everybody's got their cut. So don't do that. Drag in one person and make him pay the whatever. You've covered your 10 seats that you could have had other people in. So it's an interesting, there's a fine line of what is too expensive and what isn't. And I think to the general public, the what is too expensive is a much higher number than we as struggling artists think it is.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to move on to the last kind of big topic. And then,
there were a number of questions that pertained to diversity, and I think we've already discussed ethno-specific. We've discussed youth. The one topic we haven't touched on yet is gender, and to say. The conventional wisdom is that women are the ticket-buying decision makers within households. Then what kind of programming should we be using to attract more women to the theater? And does our lack of gender representation on stage kick us in the audience?
Okay, so that's a big topic question. So here, we're going to start over here.
Hi, it's Megan Mooney again, and actually I don't have a comment about that, but I have a comment about diversity, and I'd like us all to look around the room for a moment.
We're up here in the dark. We're up here in the dark.
So for anyone listening on the podcast, what you can't see is that this is an awfully white room right now.
Once again, we're all up here in the dark. We're up on the second level.
I just feel, what does that, well, I don't know. I mean, what does that say? I mean.
Can a brown person speak to this? Would you guys care if a brown person?
There's also lots of diverse people who are not differentiated by color, but by other things.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not for a second saying that there aren't other forms of diversity. But I think that one form of diversity that we just sort of, that we can't ignore, especially in a city like Toronto, is one that involves people of color. And this is a room where there are very few people of color.
So yeah. We are actually all on the second level. There's
inadvertent segregation.
Yeah, it's interesting to know we were all late. If I could actually speak on that, it's something that I've actually spent a lot of time sort of exploring.
Can I get your name, please?
Joseph Racinos.
Thank you, Joseph.
And I find that that the lack of audience, in my opinion, has to do with the fact of, one, education in these other places, because you do look around and most of the arts community or the theater community is, predominantly Caucasian. And going around to different theater schools and talking to the students that are up and coming and things like that, a lot of it has to do with the fact that, one, in diverse families that are immigrants and things like that, the arts isn't really something that families would support. It's more of a hobby, right? So they're coming here, and again, and I hate using this word. I really hate using urban. I hate that shit. But in those types of demographics, when we asked, it was like, oh, why are you doing these after-school programs for art, but you're not taking art as like to go to post-secondary and stuff like that? And quite honestly, the answers we got back were, oh, well, I have to, like, after this, I go and I work and I help my mother or I help my parents with my younger siblings. And so this is the only real outlet that I have. And at school, it's not really, it's not really serious enough. Like, my parents want me to go be a doctor or engineer. That's where the focus is. So it's seen as other, and you're sort of wasting your time. It'll keep you off the streets, and that's about it. So that's one of the things as to the reasons why I feel there aren't more artists of color aggressively coming out to these types of things, right? And then, I'll just leave it at that.
Another reason you'll want to talk to Joseph afterwards is his knowledge of the word urban and the fact that he's only 26, so we are just hitting target after target after target.
Hi, my name is Julie. When you're speaking about female generally being the purchaser, this might not be a popular comment to make in 2015, but I think more attention needs to be paid to the aesthetics of your cast, because people like hot. If women are buying, they want hot. Hugh Jackman's a massive star. A lot of the reason for the suburban theater goer, because he's a hot-looking guy. So I think attention to marketing your play, as aside from being just something cool and different and something that will enrich your mind, is also that you can look at something really fantastic as well, and that more is paid attention to the actors, the looks. I come from TV, so that's prominent. Any shows that I've worked on that has been a failure has been where they've had great talent, but to watch it, it's like, it's not as pleasing to the eye. And I think sometimes in theater, that is ignored because, okay, we'll throw on this wardrobe and we'll have so-so hair and so-so makeup. Beef it up a little, and I think it makes it more interesting, because that's what's popular on TV, the shows where people are about glam. It doesn't work with every single show and every single audience, but it definitely, I think, improves the quality of your work.
So you mean hot performers and better production values?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
For youth, okay.
Well, yeah.
Let's see one down here.
Hi, I'm Mara Goblum. I just want to go off of what Joseph said. Part of diversity in theater is about knowing that they're accepted regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation. And once students are in university, that's it. They've decided what they want to do with the rest of their lives most of the time, or if you're undecided major, blah, 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 whatever, you can argue that.
Slow down, you are being recorded.
Sorry, just
Not at all.
Nervous.
I know.
But you have to start earlier. Students have to know, especially in high school at a young age, that it's okay to be in theater. That theater is an amazing thing. It's an amazing concept that's existed since ancient Greek times, and that if they want to go into theater, that there's going to be a community there to support them. A lot of students in my school, I notice, they don't feel supported. They think that theater is something that their parents won't accept them for, and they have to go into sciences or maths or, whatever else. But if especially the high schoolers, the idea of soul pepper or tarragon, it's an imaginary concept of them. They have no idea how it runs or what they can offer other people. So bringing in youth is not just about knowing that if they want to create theater, they're accepted in the community, but if they want to go see theater, they're accepted anyway. That they can go see theater and say, it's okay if you just want to see theater, we want to open it up to all ages, and even if you don't understand what's going on stage, it's still an amazing thing that you could come out and see it even if you're without your parents.
Where do you go to school?
Alexander Mackenzie High School in Richmond Hill.
Alexander Mackenzie, can I get you to do me a favor?
Yes.
Can I get you to stand up and look at the audience? Can I please get a show of hands of all the theater geeks and drama students in high school? Were you one? Raise your hand. Just so you know, hon, we're so here for you.
and that's amazing. And to the theater kids who are in high school here, we love you all.
Can I just say my thing first? I've just been really holding on to it. So I see a lot of theater, and the most exciting thing for me that I saw this year was a show that Cassie Walker was involved in. And I can't remember the name of the show. Yes, it was. Now, the reason that was the most exciting thing for me that I saw this year was because I am so sick of being in completely white audiences. And I think that that show, I was one of like 4 Caucasian people in the audience, and I went, here is our fucking audience. And you know why? It's because the people on stage were not white. We want to hear stories. We go to this theater to hear stories about ourselves. How can Toronto, which is such an incredibly culturally diverse city, actually feel represented by 95% of the people on stage being white? We're saying, why are we not reaching our audiences? That's because people aren't seeing themselves represented on stage. We have to change that.
Sorry, I gotta jump in, because I've been quiet this whole time and I just had to speak to that. So I'm Cassie Walker. I do a bunch of stuff in theater. I work here at Theater Passe Muraille. I've stage managed, I've done my own stuff. And just speaking to part of the diversity issue and just like working, because I just happen to work with a lot of companies of color, of like Black theater artists. And I find, so maybe like a few years ago, I did this, I worked as assistant stage manager on this piece called Anima Spot. And I remember talking to the stage manager, who was white, and I noticed this not just with theater, but also within, just like any sort of media, this sense of like, needing to see yourself on stage, because we looked around and our question was, when it came to our show, was, why aren't there any white audience members seeing our shows? We have like this huge, what sometimes I've noticed is that when it comes to working on pieces of color or working with pieces by Black artists, like our audience members come out in droves, but then we look around and we don't see any white people there. And so I noticed that there's often this conversation around, needing like, whose benefit is it to see, or like, what does it mean when we have audience members who need to see themselves on stage, and what does that look like? How does that end up being to our detriment? Or how can we even look at what it means to, go to see theater and feel connected? Because I don't know, I think it's kind of scary, the fact that, we have to shy away from like using languages like niche. Why can't I be straight and go see a queer theater piece? Why can't I be Black and go see a white theater? Like, what does that look like, and who does that benefit? And so, like, I don't know, if that made any sense at all, but I just had to say that because I noticed it a lot, and it's curious to me.
Hi, this is Klaus. So at our theater at Second City, first of all, I'll say we don't really employ anybody hot. And there's kind of a, and we're doing pretty well. There's a bit of a joke actually in the community that there's hot and then there's improv hot. But one of the things that you do find, and which I think is a great thing about what you're seeing in the comedy scene, particularly the sketch comedy scene that I'm a part of, is that after that, again, we also have, our tickets are primarily bought by women, and the emails I get after the shows tend to be again and again and again about the strong women and the strong female message in the show. We employ remarkable women, and seeing those kinds of positive, affirmative messages from women on stage bring people back to the theater again and again. So I don't think we have to, worry on the gender issue about whether women are going to come to the theater. It may sound strange. Women love coming to the theater, and I'm so grateful for that. But the more we show them themselves in an empowered way, the more they're going to come back.
I'm Camila Diaz-Varela. I'm a musician performer. Just graduated from theater school, so I'm still pretty fresh and pretty biased that way. But thank you for speaking. Cassie is your name? Cool. I am a queer, female-identified person who is Mexican, so ethnic, brown. And I just felt like I needed to speak to this because I felt like we needed that voice here. And I recently retracted myself a little bit from the theater scene to just go into my room and figure out what I was going to do because I just kept on getting hurt. I just kept on going out and seeing theater and feeling like I was not a part of it, I didn't see it. I felt just hurt by the things that I was seeing. And I just want you guys to know that, I guess. Now I kind of went back into my room and sort of figured some stuff out, and I'm going to try to go out there and make stuff that builds a community that I feel needs to be loved a little bit and addressed. But I feel like a lot of people like me are in their rooms trying to figure stuff out and then peeking out, seeing if there's a theater company, a person that can help them. But we're kind of hiding a little bit. Yeah, and theater for me is about building a community. So it's not about me expressing my own personal struggles with myself. It's about reaching out and creating a community, either like literally in my apartment neighborhood, which is awesome, or on the internet or whatever. But creating a community that will feed and move forward all of us, not just my own self. It's not a hobby, it's a business as well. So, yeah, okay.
Thanks, Camila.
Okay, what was your name? Yeah, Camila. Okay, I think I have a play that you can be in, first of all. Second of all, I don't really see the purchasing power of parity or whatever for women necessarily. I'm a woman, I live by myself, I buy my own theater tickets. Or if you want to comp me, that's cool too, because I don't have any money. But I do agree with the woman, Julie, who mentioned about the hotness. And I think that I run this storefront with Ben, and we and all of the people that work there, we want to try to market it as a cool place to be, as a place for a party, as Emma said, as a place where people can come, see a show, tweet about it, have a drink, chat with us. And obviously, we all live in this society. We see what attractiveness and, People Magazine, that kind of thing. I don't know. I know it seems shallow, but I do think that it has worked and is continuing to work. I mean, not necessarily branding hotness, but branding rock and roll or sex, passion. Yes, we can all buzzwords. Anyone? And that being said, I mean, I'm a female artist, and I guess it just as the more that the women create. I mean, I'm hearing this all the time in screenplay and in Hollywood. They want more female directors. They want more female writers. The more that we write, then the more that we can see our own work on stage. So, and I think that there's a good movement for that in the city.
For anyone who's interested specifically in diversity issues, there's Equity in Theater, which is ADC sits on the steering committee, Playwrights Guild, Pat the Dog. There's a whole bunch. They have a Facebook page. Go check it out. There's articles about trends in different industries. And there'll be a conference coming up in Toronto specifically about that issue in April 2015. I think.
Can we have like 1 more minute just on this topic? Is that okay? Derrick, can I? Thank you. Well, I just wanted to talk about in terms of diversity and women in theater, that one of the most successful theater events I've been to this year, which I was lucky enough to be part of, and Cassie was part of last year, is Insatiable Sisters of Buddies in Bad Times, which is a showcase for women and queer women and women of color and trans people. And it's beautiful, and it's sold out, and it gets one night only. And there are people lined up outside for tickets waiting to get in, and it could sell out easily more. I don't see why that couldn't run for 2 weeks, and yet this fantastic show and all this effort and all these beautiful people come together and create something that just gets one night. And so that's what I think about when I think where my issue with niche is not, I don't think, I think we should be able to use words like person of color and queer. I think that they're powerful, and I think that claiming space and using those words and not being apologetic about those words is a powerful gesture. But I think that one of the problems I see is that those words are seen as not being mainstream, which they are. We are all people. And what the problem is because they're not seen as mainstream, they're given a very, very small amount of time. And I mean, the tickets for Insatiable Sisters are $20. They're not cheap. There's a great system in place also where if people can afford to buy tickets for other people, not even necessarily people that they know, they purchase those tickets and leave them with the box office and say, give this to someone that can't afford it. It's an incredible event and an incredible system. And if Buddies doesn't have the recourse or whatever, I don't know what the logistics behind that event are. I don't understand why other theater companies don't come and see that incredible event and say, I want that.
In terms of what you're asking, it's entirely possible that using a marketing technique, it's not a scarcity. It's one night only. You have to come and see this today, or you don't get to see it at all. It creates a sense of urgency, and it creates a sense of wanting to be part of something. If they ran it for 2 or 3 weeks, odds are your houses would be very small, says the marketing girl.
I'm going to say I really strongly disagree.
You're more than welcome to.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll take one more in this topic, and then we'll sort of go on to our, I think, final thing. But hang on a second. One more.
What did you say we're doing? We're doing one more.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, my name's Tavis, and just to speak to that exact point, I find that what I've wanted to do with producing the few shows that I've worked on is to keep it from being the one weekend kind of indie theater thing, which happens so much, and extend it to being more like a 3-week, get the ball rolling kind of idea. But it is incredibly difficult to get people to come out spread out through your run. And I think that what most of us have probably experienced is that opening night is great, and then the next, if you're doing the 1 week thing, you get a pretty solid opening and a pretty solid closing, and in between is kind of dead. And often you end up with 1 or 2 nights where it's sold out and you can't actually fit everybody in, and when the couple nights before were only half house or less than that. And so I think that is an incredibly frustrating thing that I personally have no idea how to deal with that. And I don't feel like I want to go with the one night only kind of approach. I want to be able to reach as many people as possible with the shows that we put on. And so convincing people that coming in the first week is better than trying to squeeze it in on the last day is sort of like I feel like it's a psychological thing for people to get their heads around that I don't know how to make that happen. But
we could have a pact. we could have a pact here in this room now today, right? There's that thing we're supposed to be thinking about, that we will go see theater on off-peak nights, leaving the tickets available for the less enamored or more casual audience to go on peak nights.
I have gone to 7 of the 10 Next Stage shows playing. I'm done seeing Next Stage because I went the first week because I know that's when they will need houses. Next week is when people will say, finally, okay, I'm Canadian, it's cold out, I got to go see a play and go. But that allows me the opportunity to see them, talk about them, spread the word, and put people in their houses for them.
Okay, so did we have one last sort of question topic that we were going to talk about?
Yeah, we did a lot of scribbling over here. As you could tell, we're very busy with scribbling and things like that. And we're getting short on time, so these 2 questions, 2 answers, speed round. 2 answers for each, that's it. But take them home and think about them, because it goes back to our burning question we asked earlier. How can we make theater/performing arts feel as necessary and exciting for the community and city as it does for us. Someone once said to me, well, I don't understand. Why is culture important? And I didn't know how to answer them because it was like they had said to me, well, I don't understand. Why is breathing important? How do we find the ways to explain that to them and make them feel that way? 2 answers, go.
Oh, we had a hand up there
answers?
right away.
Okay, let's go. Okay,
Sorry,
one,
here, up here.
Note the use of scarcity. There's only 2 answers allowed.
All right, so it's Holger again. I think I know how, but I don't know how we could make it happen. It's education and the media. If we don't teach high school kids that the arts are as central to our lives as money, they won't learn it. And if we don't get our newspapers and the news organizations to also spread that message, it will not gain traction. Now, how to go about doing that, I have no idea. I'm a university teacher. By the time I get to talk to students, they've already decided that they want to study drama or English. Right? It has to start earlier, and it's a government effort. Right? We need a government that is willing to not just put support, financial support to the arts, which is, I think one thing we always tend to complain, but actually support for the arts in Canada isn't bad at all, especially compared to our neighbors south of the border. It's actually pretty decent. So our government apparently is willing to put money out in support of the arts, but we need more than that. We need a government that makes an effort to teach its citizenry why life isn't all about making money. That seems fairly straightforward to me, but I don't know how you force or convince our decision makers to take that.
That sounds like breathing to me, so yeah, I understand that. Next one. I'm so glad I said
Hi
2.
there.
We're extending.
I'm just going to stand up because I want to. I'm the artistic director of the Red One Theatre Collective and the Storefront Theatre, along with Claire and other such folk. And there's lots of things that I wanted to speak to that have been spoken about here this evening or this afternoon. But this question particularly interests me. How do you make it as exciting, as relevant to the rest of the people as it is to us? Emma, you said that you don't often come out to the theater because you'd rather stay at home, but I do see you at our shows, and you come when it's this party and when there's this sense of community and there's this sense of empowerment, right? To come out and... That too, yes. Right. But you come the nights that there's the parties there. Yeah, so you also come to feel like you're part of a group, and that sense of community that we all know, that we all recognize and talk about building, what I think the root of it is a sense of empowerment, right? Through educating the younger generations about wanting to come and see theater, that's one way to empower their cultural mind, but to bring them into a place where they can see people with them, around them, making change, making action. We're also very open to people putting on shows in our space, right? So they come to the space, they see the space, they talk around, they say to themselves when they go home on the subway, I can do a show there. Then a couple weeks later, they do. We help give them the tools to facilitate that, which then builds a community from a foundation level. I'm a part of this community. I'm not just a peripheral part. I did a show in here. So this is part of my thing. Come on out. It spreads. That sense of community is one thing to build, but what is a community? What does the community do, right? Like, what is their resource? What do they mine? Do they cut down the forest, or do they help empower everybody? And I think that the way to make it as relevant to everybody else as it is to us is to be able to share the way that we feel when we go to these parties and have them feel that way. The gamification of theater, the sort of the punch drunk, sleep no more mediums, right? It gives audience agency to come and participate and empower their viewing experience. I get to choose which hallway I'm walking down. I'm part of this thing. And I think that's what people look to find. One of the church of theater they don't really appreciate because they don't want to sit there and be lectured to. So how do you, when you throw a party, how do you get people to come to your house? Do you have to give them free food? I mean, free stuff, it really gets the people out, but does that really garner the proper kind of respect and loyalty that you want? So how do we empower this community that we're building to continue to grow, I think is the bigger question.
I think it's a really good place to end this question on.
One more upstairs.
You people are killing me. It's our second extension.
One more upstairs.
Yeah, I actually really agree with what he said, and I'm also want to say that we should look at audience as
an element that is necessary to make theater and look at it like that, perhaps, not just like as a receiver. I would not go see a show where the only function that I'm providing is filling a seat and paying my $20, $40, $80. If I'm necessary there, if I'm defined, if I'm a part of it, then how do we do that? I'm not sure if it's like I don't think it's audience interaction, and I don't think it's marketing. I think there are people out there. I know there is audience out there, but we just shouldn't be so desperate, maybe. Why would I want someone who wants to watch Netflix come see my show? Do I need them? Yeah, no, I think so.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you.
That's an even better place to end this on, because that is a big question.
Excellent.
All right, here's one for you. One more question for you guys.
Last question.
Last question. I went and saw a dance show once. It was terrible. What have you seen since? Oh, I don't go to dance anymore. I read a book once. Awful. I don't read now. I saw a shitty movie 2 weeks ago. I'm never going to the movies again. Why is that first statement seemingly acceptable? How do we get people who have had that one bad experience to come back? Go.
I feel like such a broken record. Hi, it's Emma again. Everybody,
Oh,
like
God,
probably
Emma.
the person who's spoken the most here. The first phrase is acceptable for people, I think, because there's a different kind of energy required to go to the theater, because it's a live space and you have to invest in live people right in front of you, sometimes 5 or 10 feet away. And that's a very different experience than going to a movie or reading a book, where you can disengage at any time and no one other person is disrupted, unless you're like leaving a movie theater and you have to climb over a bunch of folks. In terms of bringing people back, and this is where I feel like a broken record, like put on a really good show. That's all I got.
Good stuff, Emma. One more.
People are saying we have put on a good show and nobody showed up. But anyway, here we go.
Hi, my name is David Lafontaine. I run the Theater Machine and Unit 102 Actors Company. I think, to dovetail off that, good theater is good theater is good theater. We could talk diversity, we can talk all this stuff. To what Ben said, you have to build the community within the community itself. Myself, Ben, there's other theater companies here like that, have built these storefront theaters, these small theater companies. We've created community, and then we put up really great shows. Like, I put up great shows. Ben's put up great shows. I'm sure all of you have, but you have to you have to take all the little pieces of that and put it right back into the thing. It's consistency. It's doing it over and over again. One-offs don't work. You can't come out and if you fail, not come back again. It's consistency in this thing. The reason I'm still here doing it 8 years later is because we have a great product. It's consistent. We've built an audience. This forum is interesting to me because the theater I run has actually only built an audience in the last 6 years. So when I read, we're losing people, I go, why are you losing people? Because I don't feel like I'm losing. The community, yes, maybe we are, but the people I work with, that I've built a community with, which is these people at Storefront and the Red Sand Castle, all these, there's a growth there, which means that it is coming away from the soul peppers. It is coming away from this maybe more traditional style of theater. If you want to do it, if you want to make it happen, be consistent, constantly. Look for diverse projects, do all that stuff, but build a community yourself and keep going with it. I think that, to me, is kind of, yeah.
Okay, I think we have to wrap it up. We're out of time.
Two things.
Okay.
It's the wrap up part.
Okay.
I'm wrapping up. Megan Mooney had something she wanted to say that has to do with this. She's not getting an extra chance or anything. I'm Megan.
So as a bit of a follow-up to this, it's not about this, no.
The 1 minute rule still applies.
Yes, no, I know. I'm looking at pulling together an online survey thing that will go within industry people, but also I'm going to try and find a way to connect with people who don't go to the theater. And I'm going to be pulling together questions that have come out of this, but also other questions to try and find out some information about what might be keeping people from going to the theater and what might entice them to come to the theater. So I wanted to let people know that that was happening as sort of as a follow-up and as a follow-up from this session. But I also wanted to let people know that I might be looking for some help with that. And so if anyone was interested in coming to work with me on a little working group with that, to let me know, not right now, because it's a 1-minute rule. So you can reach me at megan@mooneyontheater.com, which you can find by just going to Mooney on Theater. It's easy to find. You can also find me on Facebook. Probably a number of you are already connected to me on there, and if you're not, it's easy enough to connect with me there. So yeah, you can connect with me through any number of those ways, and connect with me if you think you might be interested. It won't count as an obligation. Connect with me when I'm ready to pull people in. I'll connect with you, see if you're still interested. If you want to do it, I'll let you know what's involved and stuff like that. That's it.
Michael Wheeler had an announcement to make as well. Michael Wheeler. You're not Michael Wheeler. Sit down.
Hi, Michael. I am the artistic director of Praxis Theatre, but I'm also recently executive director and transformation designer of Staff. And Staff was an organization that used to provide subsidized administrative services to the community. And our transformation involves turning into a capacity building organization for the sector. So what that means is we're trying to figure out how to use the resources we have there so that people, very specifically the people in this room, because I noted that most people said that they were producers and also were not members of PACT at the beginning of this. So this transformation is very much for the people in this room. And so as part of that, we'd like to figure out what it is that the indie community needs to move forward with their producing goals. And so we're having what I'm calling an open source brainstorm, which you're all invited to at 6:30 p.m. on January 26th at the Theatre Center. And what an open source brainstorm means is that we'll have a time where everybody can learn what we're up to and a time where everybody can break out and come up with new ideas. And the open source part, we'll be live tweeting the whole thing, and everything that comes out of that will be available on our website right away so that there's transparency in how we move forwards. So hope to see every single one of you there. Thanks.
Okay, also another reminder, a friendly reminder, that our podcast today, thank you, Michael Cruz, will be available at thetitleblock.com and also available on iTunes. I feel so cool saying that. And thetitleblock.com. We will put it on the Facebook events page, and it will also be available on iTunes.
Also, ADC has recently published a handbook for independent producers, which outlines the standard agreements of our contracts for hiring designers. It's available free. There's a bunch there. There's a bunch in the lobby. Take them for your friends. That's fine. We want them out in the community. And if we do run out, you can always obtain one at the ADC office. Just give us a call. You've met me now. We're not that scary.
It will not be available on iTunes.
Alas.
One last thing for me, the young lady from Alexander Muir School, I want to talk to you after. It's a good thing. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so that's it, guys. My last word for me. Thank you so much for coming. I learned so much from all of you, and I said at the beginning that this was not intended to be something where. It'd be great if there was some magic solution that somebody said, "Hey, here's the way to fix everything." But I really feel that a lot of really great conversation was started here. A lot of ideas were set out that I hope people can follow up on. We are trying to follow up somehow with a few of these things, with the podcast, staff initiative, all these things. The last word is the Next Stage Theatre Festival is still on down at the Factory Theatre. So one more week, please go to that. Please get out and see some great theatre. And if the mic's up there, can you give it to Cassie or somebody responsible to bring it down to me? Don't lose that mic. Okay.
There are 9 shows playing between this minute and 11 p.m. at Next Stage. Go see something.
Oh, Equity and Theatre Cards. Okay, Equity and Theatre Cards over here. And the podcast thing is over here as well. That's it. That's it.
Thank you all
guys so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you at last.
And that was Disappearing Act, a public forum on Canadian theatre and Toronto audiences. Thanks again to Derrick Chua and Sheila Sky and all the theatre artists who participated. The music for this podcast is PodSave music from the band 1990s called See You at the Lights. You can find them at roughtraderecords.com/the1990s. Please go to iTunes and give us a review. It will help get the word out about this podcast and share the history of theatre design in Canada. You can follow us on Twitter at TheTitleBlockCA and on Facebook.com, The Title Block Podcast. You can send comments and requests by email to thetitleBlock@gmail.com. Feel free to share this with your friends, colleagues, students, and teachers, or listen to it while you continue to comp the heck out of the opening week of the show, wondering if your audience will ever come. I'm Sue Edworthy, sitting in for Michael Cruz, and we'll see you next time on The Title Block.
I see light in you.
Like you're talking to me, like you're telling me a story.
Honey, I never relax when I talk to you. I'm always stressed and nervous and a little bit giggly.